Hello, welcome to Wednesday webinar. This is Deb Wragge, ESU 8, Staff Development, and I'm going to visit with you today about a process called LtoJ, and I'm going to focus specifically on formative assessment and using it as an enthusiasm builder. Well, first I think we need to talk about what a definition of LtoJ actually is. Dr. Lee Jenkins from California actually authored this particular process. It's a process that is used to improve student learning. And you improve the student learning by identifying what the students need to know and be able to do, or their essential concepts or essential learnings or key learnings. All of those things are interchangeable when we talk about those things, but what the kids really need to know and be able to do for a particular course, or it can be for a class, a unit, it can be for almost anything. The children's spelling words, all of those things, and it allows you to monitor their progress towards that learning. But the really nice part too is it also allows the student to monitor their progress towards the learning. LtoJ, as I told you, can be used in any workshop or any seminar, course, or learning setting that you would like to have it be used for. I use LtoJ in many of my workshops, and particularly when I offer the full-blown workshop on LtoJ and its full processes. Why should we use LtoJ? Because it focuses on the key concepts that the students need to know and be able to do by the time they have completed this course of study. It tells them exactly what the targets are that you, the teacher, are going to be focusing on. It provides regular and timely and substantive feedback about how that student is doing all by themselves as an individual or collectively as a class. That collectiveness can also aggregate up into like both sections of fourth grade, the whole middle school building, or the whole district. How are they working? Particularly if you're doing a school improvement intervention that you would like to have everyone, for instance, vocabulary. So how is everyone in the whole district doing on learning the essential vocabulary that they need in order to be successful students? LtoJ offers a review of what has been taught. So many times in our educational system, we as learners learn what we need to know for right now for a particular class or unit or a semester or a year, and then we tend to shed that. And what happens when we come across that concept, that teacher needs to actually reteach that to us, or they believe that they need to reteach it to us. So as learners, we waste a lot of school days reviewing what really where we could be doing initial learning for our students. So LtoJ offers us that regular review of what has already been taught. It also offers us a constant preview of what we're going to encounter within our course or our class or our unit and such. It offers me that view as to where we're going and what I'm going to learn or I need to know. As we take the test, the quiz rather, quite often you give LtoJ quizzes either weekly or bi-weekly, or however you have set up the system for these to occur. And it provides you on the spot formative data, which you can use to monitor and adjust your instruction as a teacher, but it also offers formative data to the student as to what they know and are able to do when they answer the questions for a particular quiz that you've given that day. Many times students become demotivated about school and less engaged all the time. It's been replicated many times that LtoJ offers that engagement and that motivation that all students need in order to invest themselves in their learning, rather than asking us questions like, um, I don't know how to do that. How well can you help me do this? Um, are 500 words enough? Do I need more? Is it less? Is that what I really have to do? It actually engages them more in their learning and causes them to have higher levels of motivation. It's been researched and replicated many times that when a student enters as a kindergartner, their enthusiasm for school is exceptionally high. And then from kindergarten, it begins to decline already in first and second grade and continues on a pretty predictable decline until a student gets to about eighth grade, where it tends to level out and flatline from the time that they are in eighth grade until they graduate as seniors. LtoJ has shown to increase the motivation of students over time because they're invested and they're enthused about their learning and want to show and share themselves and others that they do know and are able to do. Who benefits when using LtoJ? Why, it's all the teachers and all the students, everyone. It's a win-win situation, always and every time. When I teach the LtoJ class, I give my class at the beginning of the session a sheet that has 30 concepts that I'm going to be teaching during that day. This happens to be concept 1, and it shares with you how we use LtoJ and what we measure with it. We can measure the learning of information, as you know that from unpacking standards. That's the know. And then we can also measure the performance expectations of what can the students do. And there's that student enthusiasm thing again I just discussed with you in the previous slide. Believe it or not, it can help with all of the monitoring and some of the classroom management that you need to do within your classroom. It's been proven that, again, that the importance of everybody contributing to the LtoJ as a student, that everyone wants to be there every day on their attendance, especially on LtoJ quiz days, so that they can be a part of the aggregate of the class, perhaps the grade level and the building and the district. To speak with number 5 about special education and ELL, LtoJ has been used to assist these two specific educational groups as they accelerate or need to learn more consistently and more quickly sometimes the concepts and the skills that they need in order to be contributing and positive school citizens as well. There are 3 basic types of graphs that are used for measuring in education, and LtoJ uses those 3 kinds of graphs. We use a run chart, and run charts can measure individual progress at the student level, class progress at the class level or all members of the class, at the building level or the school level, whichever you want to call that, and also it can measure the district. Now, a scatter diagram is used in order to identify anonymously where each student within the class or the school or whatever is currently achieving and how they achieve over time as we move from week to week or quiz to quiz. A histogram, which is a type of graph which should never be not done when we do an LtoJ quiz or we record the results of an LtoJ quiz. A histogram tells that for that particular point in time and for that particular quiz, how many students got each of the items that were asked or quizzed on correct. And that tells over time, it provides information to the teacher as to how the learning is progressing within their with the students within the class, and then it also offers that those students for the teacher, it's what do they need to reinforce, what do they need to monitor and adjust. Now, what I have right here is a copy or a sample of a student run chart. The student puts their name up on the top and they keep track of their personal progress with this. This particular chart that you're looking at across the horizontal axis, it's set up for a full semester of 28 weeks. And then up the vertical axis, it tells us that there are 5 items that are being asked each week or quizzed on each week. A student actually treats this like a bar graph and colors in the squares to indicate how many items they got correct. I know from working with LtoJ for a number of years that this particular class run chart is set up for approximately 25 to 34 questions. And the reason that I know that is if the square root of the number of essential learnings you have identified as a teacher is enough of a sample over these weeks or these amount of time in order to be able to measure the levels of success of the student. So the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 36 is 6. So I know that if they have 5, it's closer to 25 items, because like if I had 30 items, I would choose the square root of 5. So that's what happens. Then when we look at this particular, this is called a class run chart. And what this tells me that collectively, how many did the students get correct each week we took that. And across the horizontal axis, again, this is a full semester display. And we can see week 1, week 2, week 3, and so far. It identifies the class growth within the number of correct answers per quiz. So I take all of the numbers of answers, correct answers of all of the students, I add them together, and then I graph this on this particular chart. What will happen is, particularly, most usually, if it's something the learnings are not something the students totally familiar with, you'll start out with an L. That means that most of your learners will know have fewer correct answers than they will have incorrect answers. And as they become more and more familiar with material through both your teaching and the assessing using the LtoJ quiz, they'll go from knowing fewer items to more items to more items to more items until they basically go through a bell curve. And then we find that at the end of the semester, we have many or most of our students that are getting all of the items correctly. In other words, we'll have higher number of correct items. So they go from the L through the bell to the J. This is the scatter diagram that I was talking to you about. And it's a whole class diagram, and there's a dot for each student, and you use that to indicate how many items each student had correct on each quiz. So each week, every student puts their dot as to how many items they had correct, because there could be two dots in 1, 3 in 3, and maybe 7 in 0. That's how my class did that week. And then the next week, what it offers is a visual of the overall progress of the class. And the other thing about it is it offers anonymity. No dot has a name beside it. It's just a dot. And that way, every student's progress is monitored. Now, this scattergram is the kind of, if you ever have a parent that comes in and wants to know, well, I understand you're using LtoJ, but how do you know, or how can I know how my student is doing? Well, you have the class run sheets, and you as teacher can look at the student run sheets, and you can identify a dot um, that you know may be this student, and you can say, well, this dot right here represents your student, and then they can visually see in how their student is represented in relationship to the other students in the class. This is that histogram. You do one for every quiz that you do. This is an interesting graph because along the horizontal axis, you have the number correct there, and up the vertical axis, why you have the number of students in the class. So every quiz graph how many students had 0 correct, how many 1, how many had 2 correct, 3 correct, 4 correct, and 5 correct. This is very valuable information because this information tells us whether or not the class is making progress as we work through the course and use LtoJ as one of the formative assessment measuring tools. Now, this is a sample of what a graph might look like when we have the first quiz of the year. Notice that the tallest bar is the blue bar, where 12 of the students had 0 to 1 item right on their quiz. And we had, about 8 students in the red bar that got 2 to 3 correct. And there were only 2 students that got 4 to 5 correct on that particular assessment or quiz. Now remember that these students have not been taught any of this information that is on your essential learning sheet, but this is where they are right now in their knowing and doing about the content in which you are going to teach. Even the items that you gave or used for your quiz offered them that preview of what is yet to come, and for a few of them it looks like they might have had a little bit of review when we look at the red and the yellow bars. Now, the next slide is going to show us that we've progressed through the year. We have taught all of our essential learnings, and here we notice that we have the opposite coming true here, where we have more of a J shape with the bar that we look at here. We have no students that have gotten 0 to 1 correct in this last test of the year. We have 2 students that had 2 to 3 correct. We had 4 students with 4 to 5 correct, but we had 12 students that had 6 to 7 correct. If you remember when we were looking at this one, there were no students that had 6 to 7 correct. So you have had, over the course of the studying that you've been and teaching you've been doing with your students, you've had students move from this L-shaped bar situation through what we call the bell shape. So everyone's rise has a rising action. They're getting better and better to this actual J action, where many or most of the students are far, far to the right of the graph and their learning forms a J, the J, thus LtoJ. Here are 5 or 6 rather things that you need to do in order to implement LtoJ. You have to identify your essential learnings or key ideas so that it identifies your teaching targets, and it also identifies for the students their learning targets. Then you have to inform your students of those targets. Yes, on the first day of the class, you give those students a sheet that has all of the learnings that they're going to have. If it's a spelling list, and there are 75 words on that spelling list, everyone gets 75 words. If it's vocabulary, everyone in that particular class or that group of students receives the word and a definition that the teacher is going to use or implement within the coursework. Sometimes if you're using a text, it might identify what were the most important things that students needed to know from, for instance, my history, from the history text or from the history class for the first semester. And we also need to inform these students on what the process is going to be when we implement LtoJ. We have to let them know that they're going to be taking a quiz weekly or bi-weekly or however you've set that up. They're going to graph their results, and we're going to use these specific graphs. And that, like in number 3, we're going to quiz these students regularly or on a regular basis weekly on randomly selected items. Some of them they're going to know, some of them they're not going to know, and that's okay because they aren't expected to know. But over the course of the time of the course, they will learn every one of those things. Then we're going to teach them how to use and create Studentrun, Classrun, scatter diagram, and all the other charts that they need, such as the histogram. We're going to post that data in particularly the Classrun and the scattergram and maybe the building or the district, and we're going to post that in a public place so that we can monitor our progress, see where we're going, and then we're going to celebrate our all-time best. All-time best mean that you got the most items correct for that particular quiz compared to all the quizzes you've taken prior to that time. Teachers teach learners what they need to know and do. I don't think any of you will challenge me on that idea, but this is the trick to teaching. It's to require learners to think and apply what they have been taught to know and do. If they cannot think about or apply, which puts them higher in the Bloom's taxonomy or in any kind of a taxonomy that we use in education, it actually it makes them think and apply what they're learning, and they hold on to that learning a lot longer. It means something to them. Now, I've been talking to you about LtoJ as a process, which provides feedback, and that would be formative. You can also use LtoJ as a summative in order to determine the results of the learning that the students have accomplished over the period of time that you have been instructing them. Students do not need to have a huge test in order to determine how much they know or how much they have learned and are able to share back with you over a semester's time or a course's time. You can use the square root of the total of the number of total items that you have identified as essential learnings, and you can, over the trend of the students and the application of the students, determine whether or not you have results which are truly summative of the learning that they have done. I find that teachers are far more hesitant to use this for summative because we are still in that industrial model where we want to have our students regurgitate everything that they have learned over the semester. But remember that the purpose of LtoJ is to not allow students to shed their learning. I mean, only hold on to it for the test and then shed it for a while and then relearn it or refresh themselves with it and jam or cram for those assessments. But rather that this learning is constant, and then if we have several opportunities in order to learn it and to share what we know about it, well, then we have a better opportunity for us to be more competent with that learning and be able to apply that particular learning to this course and other courses that we take. The primary aim of a school system is to increase success and to decrease failure. LtoJ is a process which increases success, both of teachers and students. I highly encourage you to consider using LtoJ as a formative assessment process and tool within your classroom. If you'd like to know any more information about LtoJ, please feel free to contact me here at the ESU. And I really have enjoyed being with you. Thank you for listening and watching.